welcome everyone to our business builder series. My name is Matt Sturman. I'm one of the attorneys with Shafritz and Dean. Doug normally hosts this, but he is on vacation, so he asked me to step in and take over. We appreciate you coming and taking the time to join us. We started this back in the fun times of the COVID lockdown when nobody was able to get together in person. So we thought we decided we would do a webinar or a web series where we could meet together virtually and talk about things that we found important or relevant for the real estate industry. And after the lockdown ended, we just kept on doing it because it seemed popular and people seemed to like it. So we've been doing it since. We do it every third Wednesday at 1 right here on Zoom. And we will move on. And I will let you know that next month we'll have Kyle Peace with Millennium Brokerage Group. And he is going to be talking about the blind spots of financial / retirement planning for business owners and 1099 employees. So if that's something that's interesting to you, we'd love to have you join us again. And that's going to be November 15th at 1. Moving on, this month, we've got Tim Hardeman. He's the founder of Hardeman Real Estate. And today he's going to be talking to us about mastering renovation costs for houses needing a little bit of TLC. I'm going to let him switch over, but I did want to let you know if you have questions, feel free to ask them in the chat, which I'll be monitoring if I can learn to speak, and I'll make sure those get asked. So for now, I'm going to let Tim take it away.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for jumping on the call. I know that everyone always has a lot of stuff going on, especially midweek. And I appreciate you being here and for Shafritz and Dean hosting. I've been partnered up with Shafritz and Dean for 2-3 years now. I've had a fantastic relationship and they've been awesome. So if you guys are not working with them yet, you should be. They didn't pay me to say that, I promise. As Matt said, my name is Tim Hardeman. I'll give you a little bit of a about me presentation. I'll show you some photos. I'm right here in Atlanta. My office is at the intersection of like 285 and 400. So very close to Shafritz Glenridge office. I'm over in Sandy Springs. And let's see, I've been at it since 2012. That's when I became a realtor. Started with KW. I was selling 100 plus houses a year, started a small team. What else did I do? I was like top 1% or something agents in the country. Then I peeled off from Keller and I started my own brokerage. We started flipping houses. And currently I have a construction team, property management company, a fix and flip business. We do some retail stuff, not as much anymore. And I'm buying up investment properties and getting ready to start building them, houses and apartments. Some stuff about me. Let me see if I can share my screen and I'll show you guys some photos. As I mentioned while folks were logging in, this will be an interactive presentation. So I like having a small group. The reason I like it is because everyone can get a chance to ask questions, whether it's in the chat like Shalisa typed in earlier, or earlier when me and Willie were talking. I'm open to either one. And I encourage you to ask questions because I want to tailor this for the next hour to really apply to what you're doing, any problems that you're having, things you want to learn, and any ideas you want to bounce regarding real estate or just life in general. The only rule that I ask you guys is if this stuff doesn't apply, just chime in and we can talk about, whatever y'all want to talk about, traveling or mountaineering or working out or doing whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me see if I can do that here. Cool. If you guys will tell me, unmute your mics and just chime in and tell me if you can see my screen and what I'm currently showing.
Clear. We see it.
You see it? Okay, great. Today's topic, mastering renovation costs for houses needing TLC. A little bit about me. I just got married 2 weeks ago. This is my beautiful bride, April. We got married in Positano, Italy. And my family is not wealthy by any means. I was not given anything. Everything that I'm doing right now, I kind of had to stumble around and figure out on my own. And it's been a pretty cool experience being able to navigate the real estate market, start a couple successful companies, meet somebody that I absolutely love, and just kind of have life really unfold in a cool way. Not to say there's not challenges. I think everyone's got stuff going on in their personal life, no matter how pretty the Instagram photos look. But I feel very thankful to be here with you guys and just to be doing what I'm doing. You can probably see the smile on my face, how happy I am. So what I've been doing lately, a little bit more about me. I've been doing this thing called the 7 Summits, which is where you summit the highest continent, highest mountain on each continent. This is me in Africa on the top of Kilimanjaro wearing a suit. That's a real photo, by the way. When we went up there, I was climbing this thing. The guides were like, do not take your gloves off. You're going to get frostbite. And here I am throwing on a red suit and tie on the peak. So anyway, here are a couple more shots. This is me in Alaska last summer when I summited Denali on the left side. You can see my face got pretty beat up. The guy in the middle right there, that's Nim's Die. If you guys have ever watched Netflix, he's a famous mountaineer. He came out with a movie called 14 Summits, I think it was. He's sponsored by Red Bull. Really good documentary that's not just about mountaineering, but about like overcoming big things in your life and hitting big goals. Highly recommend watching it. I promise we're going to get to the real estate in just a minute. Couple more shots. This is me on the right in where was I at? This is in Argentina while I was climbing Aconcagua a few months ago. And in December, I'm going to be in Antarctica. That's going to be an interesting one. And then Everest coming up in 2025. So that's basically what I've been up to on the personal side. I just moved into my new house in Brookhaven, which is pretty close to my office. Thank God for a quick, short commute, because before I was in Midtown and that traffic was killing me coming home. This is our team. We've got a fairly young team. I'm probably the oldest one here at a ripe age of 33. Everybody else is in their 20s. We've got an office dog by the name of Maverick. And we just like to have a good time, to work hard and have a good time doing it. There's a few bullet points here. We've got, like I mentioned earlier, a brokerage, a construction team. I've got a portfolio of rental houses that I just started buying on my own. A property manager that manages them. And every now and then we'll do some listings and not really working with many buyers. So if you're a good buyer's agent, let me know, because I'm literally just telling people I'm not working with buyers anymore, unless it's like my mom or something. Yeah, that's a little bit about me. If you're on Instagram, follow me on there. It's Tim_Hardeman. And I try to post stuff about what we're doing in the office and just a little bit about my life. So follow me on there, Tim_Hardeman. Send me a message. We'd love to connect with you. My give today is we're going to cover 3 case studies. These are houses that I bought in the past 12 months that I renovated, that were like beat up, didn't look good, that I renovated, put some money into, and flipped and sold and made some money on. And we're going to be covering the purchase prices, construction expenses, buyer agent fees, sales prices, and the net that I made at the end of the day. As we're going through, does anybody want to hear anything specific as you kind of start seeing the beginning stages of the presentation, talking about construction and flips and real estate investments, what I've been doing on my own? If you have questions and there's stuff you want to see, please type it in the box, and we'll have Matt holler out and tell us if we need to hit any of those questions. I'm going to try to see if I can pull up our little chat box. Maybe not. Moving along, our first one, our first case study. This is 521 Watson Bay Trail. Not a bad little house. This is located in Stone Mountain. From the outside, you can see It's got a couple little bald spots in the lawn. Exterior doesn't look bad, you know, brick exterior, some overgrown trees. And this is a Google. So I know a lot of times it wasn't when I'm giving this presentation, people say, where do you find houses that you can buy and renovate? Because it's a challenge, even though now the market's slowing down, the rates are going up. It's still, I think, a little bit of a challenge to find good deals. This deal in particular came to us from a Google pay-per-click ad. We've got a website and a provider that runs ads for us that basically, like if you type it on Google, you know, sell my house, cash Atlanta, something like that, we should be up there popping up. So this lady called me. She said, I want to sell my house. Can you give me an offer? Let me show you some of the before shots as we flip through. You can see this house, and we specifically look for houses that are not retail worthy. Does anybody know what not retail worthy means?
I'll spill. Not polished.
Not polished, exactly. Not if you list them on the market and you're working with a buyer and you show this house and you walk through and then you say, hey, Mr. Buyer, what do you think about that house that we just walked through? They give you the feedback of, you know what, Willie, I don't know. The carpet didn't match the drapes. The furniture was old. The paint was beat up. And it's got too much work, more work than I'm willing to put into it. Or maybe I don't have enough money to do the work after I move in. And it's just not going to do it for me. These are the houses that I look for that need that TLC that I can buy from the home seller, bring them value by saying I'm going to buy it as is. You can leave your old furniture in there if you want, or you can take it with you. You pick your closing date, and you don't have to list it on the market. So a few more before shots. As you can see, we got some beat up cabinets, old Formica countertops. The paint is pretty rough. It's just dark and dingy. The blinds are all yellow, and not the prettiest house, right? What I noticed is if a house is fixed up, and there's people looking for houses, let's say that covers 95 or 100% of the market. Like everybody wants to buy a house that's move-in ready, whether you're an investor looking for rental property, whether you're a homeowner looking for yourself and for your family, or you're looking for somebody else. Like a house that checks all the boxes is fixed up and pretty. This house, it is beyond, the repair scope is beyond somebody that watches HGTV and says, hey, I'm willing to do a little weekend, you know, project here and there and paint a couple rooms. This is to the point of like investor grade palette of like, man, this is so much work. I don't even know where to start. Like, I don't know how much it's going to cost to replace cabinets and tops and like windows, to the point to where to a normal homeowner, normal home buyer, it's overwhelming. This is what we look for. Some more before shots. You guys remember the old school, like 90s, early 2000s, brass was like the thing. It was like all the gold brass knobs and whatever. Yeah, this was this house. Outside, got a bunch of green stuff growing on the siding, some overgrown stuff in the backyard. Not too easy on the eyes. And then we went in, we cleaned it up a little bit. We cut some trees in the front. You can see there used to be a few trees here. Pressure washed the whole thing, replaced the garage doors, painted it, replaced the trim, replaced the windows. And now it looks pretty nice, right? It looks like a normal home that people can walk into and they say, oh man, this is like, actually, this is a house that I can move into. New carpet, paint throughout, walls, ceilings, trim, LVP on the main floor, new light fixtures. I get everything staged. If we do a full flip, we do staging. I know a staging, like for a while, it took me a while to come to grips of like, am I overspending? It's like $3,000 for a month of staging. Is it going to be worth it? How does it quantify into more showings, lower days on the market, higher purchase price from a buyer's offer? But I'm a full believer now that staging goes a long way. By the way, I use Pat Schankle at Georgia Home Staging. She's awesome. I'll send out some of the vendors that I use either in the chat, or I'll ping them over to Tracy and she can send them out so everybody can see some of the vendors that I use for these flips. I'll include the guy that does my windows. By the way, everything that I do, it's not like super fancy. We're not in the 5, 6, 700 million plus price point. Our sweet spot's like 200,000-300,000 normal houses for normal people, like a house that we would buy and move into, not like, you know, somebody famous buying a fancy estate on the river. Like I don't touch that stuff. That ain't for me. Countertops, I'll share my countertop guy. In this picture, you can see that the cabinets are just painted. It's not brand new cabinets. So finding ways to improve the value of the home without overspending on the construction. The tubs, everybody loves these tubs. Even though like a buyer says, like my wife, she's like, oh man, like I really want a nice tub. I'm like, okay, cool. We'll get a nice tub in our new house. And then she's used it one time. But it looks good, you know, as long as it looks good, that's all that matters, right? That's what people buy is they see these tubs and they say, oh, such a nice master bathroom, but they don't hardly ever wind up using them, maybe once a year. The shower, we replaced the glass, put in some new tile, and cleaned up the backyard and made it look a little bit nicer, painted the outside. So a lot of the flips that we do wind up falling in the like $30,000 to like $90,000 range on labor and materials. And I'm going to show you the expenses and the net of this house specifically. Let's jump in there. By the way, as I'm going through this cost breakdown, if you're one of these people that gets analytical, like whenever I'm watching a presentation, like somebody writes this out and I'm over here with my calculator, like adding up, like, dang, Tim, this is not adding up to 85,000. I'll tell you right now, these are not exact numbers. It's close enough. It's probably within a $10,000 range, but I didn't want to like have a full blown spreadsheet up here of every little thing that we did. So this is a general overview of most of the expenses, probably 90% of the expenses, and the total construction cost at the bottom. That is the actual cost that it wound up being according to our accountant. So we had 3 dumpsters at $525 a piece. I use Aero Waste for my dumpsters. They do a pretty good job. There's probably cheaper dumpster providers out there, but I like Aero because they're super quick. I'll tell you right now, as we're covering this one of the questions that I get is, what are the things that you can do to a house? Whether I'm like a listing agent talking to a seller on a listing appointment, and they're like, hey, Willie, what should I do with my house to make it show better or sell faster or sell for more money? Or if you're thinking about like doing a flip yourself, people say, what are the things that I can do to my house that cost the least amount of money, that give me the biggest bang for my buck? And I'll tell you, this is not me just spitballing. This is me from experience. This is what we do at a lot of homes. One of the biggest things is just a clean out. A clean out is drop a dumpster or two, throw all the old stuff out, cut back the ivy and the bushes around the yard, do some general landscaping, throw out some pine straw, pressure wash it, and do some basic stuff. Number one thing that you can do. The second is going to be paint. Then you got the floors, and then probably like hardware and light fixtures. So going back to Watson Bay, 521 Watson Bay, we dropped the dumpster. We did 7,200 worth of landscaping. We cut about 3,000 worth of trees that were hanging over the house that looked like they're about to cave it in. We had some exterior wood rot, damaged siding. That was $1,400. A termite treatment, because in Georgia, as we know, I should say, as I learned, it's not if you got termites, it's a matter of when you'll have them. And lately I've dealt with some nightmares with termites. So if you're a buyer's agent getting inspections, like just use a freaking termite company to give you a termite letter. Like a lot of houses have termites and the expenses can add up. We spent about 12 grand on one in Woodstock just recently, where they ate through the freaking beams in the floor. I mean, it was bad. Anyway, I can tell you more about that offline. Windows, $7,000. I use Vinyl Window Solutions, really good company for inexpensive windows. These are not like top of the line, fancy Anderson windows or Pella windows. I'll send you the contact for Bruce and Elijah that do my windows. Gutters, $1,500. A garage door. We painted the walls, ceilings, trim. and the kitchen cabinets. Notice that earlier when I was talking about the before and the after shots, the cabinets were painted. They were not replaced. That's a really good way to save some money. Kitchen countertops, $3,300. Floor, we replaced the carpet, LVP, and the tile for $10,000. Master bath, $3,400. That included that shower and a little bit of tile and the countertops. Lighting, $2,500. Staging, $3,000. That was one of those unknown expenses, but I firmly believe in it. And materials, roughly $20,000. Total construction costs, $85,000. Before we move forward, does anybody have any questions? Matt, Tracy, anybody in the chat have questions?
Yeah, Tim, this is awesome, man. Question. So just backing up a little bit, when purchasing that home, how do you determine what your offer is going to be based on the the state of the home? You do your, typically you do your comps and all that kind of stuff, but being that this needed a lot of work, how do you determine what's a fair offer?
Fantastic question. And really, that's where it all starts, because you go to a house, or somebody calls, or you're like driving around the neighborhood, you see a beat up house, and you're like, you know what? I'd maybe like to do a flip on it, but how much do I pay for it? And on paper, the way to do it is you obviously pull up MLS, you hit the radius search. Typically, I start with a quarter mile with an in matrix. I'll put in the address of the house that I'm trying to find the value for. I'll go a quarter mile, active, pending, sold in the past 180 days. And then from there, I try to go further and further out if I'm not getting enough data, from a quarter mile to half a mile and probably out to a mile. From there, I look at what's sold specifically in the neighborhood, exactly the same way that we would as a listing agent if I'm going to like pull comps on a house. But the kicker is the construction costs, because you can say, okay, a house, I think in the neighborhood, if it's fixed up and it looks good, will sell for 400. Now I want to make 25, 35, 50,000 from the renovation, right? So you're backing into it. You got 400,000 as the ARV, the after rehab value, minus whatever profit you want to make. Let's say you want to make $50,000. So you subtract out the 50. Now you're down to 350. Minus, obviously, you have to pay a buyer's agent commission on that 400,000. A buyer agent. What's a buyer agent commission? Somebody chime one out. I'm not good at math.
3%. I don't know, whatever.
3% of 400,000. Who knows what 3% of 400,000 is?
12,000.
Bingo. Wow. Brilliant. 12,000. So now we're at 350 minus 12. That puts us at 38. And you can probably see where I'm going with this, Willie. You keep subtracting out, subtracting out. Now, the hardest part is the construction, especially for somebody that's never done a flip before. So then you're at the house and you're saying, I need to prepare a scope of work for things that need to be renovated. If you're interested in getting a scope of work, I'm going to type my email in the chat. All right. My email is tim@hardemanre.com. I just sent it to everybody. If you want a scope of work, send me a message and say, hey, Tim, please send me your scope of work. We've got a construction manager that goes out to every property and prepares a scope of work. And we have a template to where he can walk through each house systematically and say, we need to cut these shrubs. We need to cut this tree. We need to pressure wash the driveway. We need to do a dumpster clean out, a trash out. We need to demo the floors. We need to put carpet here, LVP there, countertops here, paint the cabinets, a tub, new light fixtures, doorknobs, and then at the very bottom, come up with the price for all of that. So that's probably the hardest part, Willie, is now if we're at 335 and let's say it's going to cost us 35,000 for the construction. So now we're at 300,000. Then you got to sort of think about holding costs. You might have insurance. You might have hard money costs. You might have HOA dues. So maybe they'll cost you another 10,000. And that takes us to our offer price to the home seller of $290.
Okay.
Now there's always going to be that back and forth of like, Tim, at $290, if I sell my house, the rates are 8% and some change. What am I going to do? I can't get a nicer house. Like there's going to be some negotiation back and forth. But I think the key is if you can bring the home seller value in saying, ma'am, I'm going to buy your house as is. You don't have to show it. You don't have to do any repairs. Like if you bring somebody enough value, they will hopefully agree to the price that you're proposing to buy their house for. So good question there, Willie. And I hope that answered it. Any other questions?
Tim, we had a question from Brenda in the chat about labor. I mean, how much do you add for labor if it's not your team doing it?
Whew. Brenda, labor is a tricky one. I'll tell you about the labor that I use. So I think of labor in 3 stages. Stage 1, the most expensive labor, is the guy that shows up to the house with a clipboard and a nice white button up, and he can communicate, and he picks up the phone and he shows up on time to your appointment to get an estimate for your floors, and he works for a company and he hands you a business card. That's going to be the highest labor. They're licensed contractors. They've got great 5-star reviews on Google. They're like, those are going to be the most expensive labor folks, whether it's countertops, floors, paint, or whatever else. I don't use those guys. I used to use them, but I don't use them. Then my middle labor tier is going to be guys like that have done the work they've been painting houses for 5-10 years. They've got a van, they've got their brother and their cousin that works with them. They've got a Home Depot account where they can pick up the materials. When they send you an invoice, it's on the back of a napkin, probably with some coffee spilled on there. So they're not the most polished. They might show up a little bit late. I love those guys because we've got a system to plug and play with those guys. Those are the majority of our labor guys. The difference, and I should say the lowest tier, is like day labor, which there's plenty of use for day labor. Those are the guys that you go and you say, fellas, I need to have some landscaping done. I'm willing to pay you $20 an hour. I'm going to give you a ride. I'm going to give you the tools. Like we're here. That's the least expensive labor. So 3 tiers of labor. If you're just starting out, I recommend using the top tier, probably the most expensive. And that's, in my opinion, in my sort of, by the way, this is just an average, is probably going to cost you 25% more than the middle tier labor that I'm using. Okay. So let's do some quick math on that. So if our total construction costs, I'm going to pull up my calculator if somebody wants to do this with me. My total construction costs are $85,000, and my materials from Home Depot are $20,000. So you guys will all get the same price for material. I might get a little bit lower preferred like pricing for bulk, but everybody will pretty much have the same material costs. So you do $85,000 total cost minus materials of $20,000. What does that give us? Anybody there?
65, right?
65. Bingo. We got, so 65 is the labor price for all this work. And if we take 65 and we multiply it, we increase it by 25%. You multiply by 1.25. That gives us a labor price of approximately $81,000. Then you add your materials back in there, 20,000. So it puts you probably at about $100,000 for the same renovation. Like a normal person, as long as obviously they shop around, they sort of do their due diligence on those top tier contractors, maybe you could complete this reno for, let's say, 100,000. Okay. What else? Who's got other questions? Brenda, great question there. Willie and Brenda, great job. I'm going to hit you with a smiley face, Brenda, on the chat. Love it. If anybody else has questions, ping me in there. If you think that this presentation sucks, also let me know.
Question, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Aside from the aesthetic point of view, if if the water heater is working and HVAC unit's fine, but it has reached its ages, would you swap it out with new one or would you leave it?
The age-old question. And I think this one is a matter of like preference and style. So there are a lot of fix and flip companies that do similar stuff to what I do here, that do the bare minimum. And we, as a buyer's agent, we've all walked through those houses. You see the nice pics, your buyer hearts it in the little portal. You go out there on Saturday, and then like you're like, this house just doesn't feel good. Like it's got new paint and carpet, but it's kind of, it feels like corners have been cut. We are trying to move away from renovations like that, where you kind of like skimp on the HVAC. You know, you're like, the water heater, it's not leaking, but it's rusted and it's 23 years young. Like, you know, it needs to be replaced, but you're like, should I do it if there's not a problem? Typically, I will say yes. I would rather make a little bit less on a house and do it right, rather than squeeze every penny out of it and then have some like new family move in that's never owned a house, and then their water heater floods their whole house on like week 1 of living there. You know, that's just, it just helps me sleep better at night, you know? But there are times that I think it's appropriate to just put some lipstick on a pig, I guess you could say. Change the carpet, paint the walls. I'll tell you guys, if you decide to do this, don't try to sell the house as like a brand new reno. Like if you hit him with the carpet and the paint, nothing wrong with that, as long as you tell the buyers, like, hey, just so you know, I just kind of cleaned this place up. It still needs a lot of work. Buyer beware. And tell them about that water heater, that it's old, and the HVAC. It's better for you to tell them as the flipper, rather for them to find out through an inspection. Then they come back and they hit you with an ATAC that's got 28 items on there, and then they try to terminate the contract, and then you're back at square one. Did that help?
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. You ever do flips?
I'm a newbie, but yes.
I love it. Good. Everybody here should be thinking about this stuff, because there's some dollars to be made. Any other questions before we move on to the dollars that were made on this deal? Going once, going twice. Moving on to the profits. We made 63 grand on this one, net. This is our like rough pricing here. So Willie, you were talking about the price and how much to buy it for. We wound up buying this house for 240,000, put 85 grand into it, paid a buyer agent 12,000 once we sold it for 400,000, and our net was approximately 63,000. That's after we closed at Shafritz and Dean. Shout out to my favorite real estate attorney out there. That's after like paying hard money costs and like insurance costs and utilities while we were holding it. That's like net. It's still pre-tax net. And as you guys are aware of the tax situation, that 63 can cut down pretty quick once you got to pay the taxes. But 63 is a pretty good payday, especially if you do a bunch of these a year, or even if you're doing your first one. Like whether you're in real estate or you're doing something else and you're like, you know what, I want to flip a house, I think this would be cool. Like I guarantee you, a brand new person, if you watch and read enough Bigger Pockets, you can figure out how to flip your first house in 12 months. Like who wouldn't like a $63,000 bonus? Like I would. I mean, that's a lot.
Hey, Tim.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned taxes. So do you get hit with capital gains tax if you tried to sell this, like after you guys are done with it, or do you have to wait 2 years, or how does that work?
Yeah, man, I thought you would never ask. I'm looking for a book here, Willie. Hold on. I'm going to suggest to everybody here, I'm guessing like probably 90% of us are business owner or self-employed. Book is called Profit First. It's written by Mike Michalowicz. All right. So I'll give you like a general overview of the book. He's written a couple other books. I think personally, running an operation, fixing, flipping houses, being a real estate agent, having a team, or whatever like self-employed business there is, whether it's a dental office, a guy that has a car wash business, someone that mows lawns or does landscaping. One of the biggest problems, because we typically just like fall into this thing, like we're not taught how to do this in school, how to properly manage a business. Maybe I was taught. I never really paid much attention in school. I was too busy cheating off my neighbors. And one of the biggest things that we're not taught is how do you manage your dollars when they're coming in? So in a nutshell, I'll tell you how I manage mine, and then you guys hopefully implement this, because one of the biggest growing pains that I had scaling a business is figuring out the cash flow. So I got 4 accounts. This is like, I'm going to try to simplify it as much as possible. 4 accounts. Number one, first account is called the capital account. So let's say you make a check from selling a house. That full check that's coming from Shafritz and Dean after the closing, you deposit it into your Wells Fargo capital account. All income goes in there. Maybe you help somebody secure a rental. Maybe you mow somebody's lawn. Maybe you clean somebody's house. Any money that comes in goes in there. From there, you've got 3 other accounts. The second account is going to be your reserve account. So you pay yourself first. All right. I like to put 25% in reserves. So if I make 100,000 on a flip, I peel off 25,000 and put it into the reserves. And it goes in there and it does its thing. Third account, this is to answer your question, is called the tax account. 25% goes into the tax account. Fourth account is my operating account. 50% goes into my operating. That's the money that I use to pay the bills for this office. That's what we use to pay our employees. That's what I use to buy a new computer so I can give this fantastic Zoom presentation. And then from there, my salary comes out of that as like the business owner. So remember, 25% goes to your reserves, 25% to your taxes, 50% goes to your operating. The goal is to put less into operating, more into your reserves over time. Read this book, Profit First. It's going to explain that a little bit more. So the reason behind that is so you don't get hit with the tax bill at the end of the year and you're like, holy smokes, like I owe how much? Even though I still get that feeling, my accountant calls me, he's like, dude, you got to pay X amount in federal and Georgia tax. I'm like, but I'm glad I got that money socked away because I'm not scrambling at the end of the year. Willie, does that help?
Yes, yes, it does. It does. So you're expecting to get taxed on that. You don't wait and try to hold it. I guess you can do both, but in general, I guess you can hold it for I guess a number of years before you get, or you can just eat the taxes if you decide to sell it right away, right?
I would rather have my accountant call me and say you owe 250,000 in taxes and have that money sitting there than
Right.
have him call me and tell me that I owe 250,000 in taxes and I only got 50 to pay it.
Yeah, yeah. So put that money aside.
Put it aside, and if it's left over and he says, hey, you're good, then go and have a party with it. Take your wife out and, go on vacation.
I have one more question.
Yes.
So in terms of flipping, if you are able to do it in a short period of time, and if you are able to flip and sell it within the year, I'm told that that's considered short-term capital gain versus if it's over a year, it's long-term. Now, would you try to hold the property for over a year so that you can pay long-term tax versus the short-term tax? What would you do?
I got to start this answer by saying I'm not an accountant.
Okay. Okay.
So, what I do is our bread and butter is fixing and flipping houses. We do roughly 150 transactions a year. And my thinking is, I'm going to leave the tax strategy to my accountant. He can discuss it with me and tell me how to do it best every quarter, which is how often we meet and talk about the bigger picture. We meet monthly to go over the books and figure out how much I'm spending, how much I'm making. I don't know the answer to your question. Do you hold it for this year? Do you sell it next year? I think it gets to the point to where, you know, to where you're making money, and whether you sell it this year or you sell it next year, you're still going to get hit with that tax. It's obviously different if you keep it as a rental. This is a flip. If you keep it as a rental, what I've been doing is cost segregations on all of my properties. That means that the life of the building on of this actual house, 521 Watson Bay Trail, excluding the dirt, is 27 and a half years. The IRS basically says that in 27 and a half years, this building is worthless. So normally you would depreciate it like evenly over that time. With a cost segregation, you have a guy that goes in there that does cost seg studies, and he says, well, wait a second. The shelf life of carpet in a house is not 27 and a half years. Like if you keep your carpet for 27 and a half years, that junk is, that's no good, you know? So he goes through and he says, carpet life is 5 years. LVP life is maybe 10 years. And then he depreciates your property and writes off more in 1 year so you can get a bigger tax deduction called a cost segregation. So if you're looking to cut down your taxes, I would recommend chatting with your accountant about doing a cost seg. Great question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We got 15 minutes and I got 2 more case studies. So I like doing the questions because I feel like they're more applicable. We can keep moving and see some other ones. Any votes, any questions, comments, or concerns? Moving on. Let's see the next one. All right, here's one that we bought recently. 3781 Travis Trace. It's a 6-unit building. You can see the 6 units. You guys can still see my screen, right? Type something in the chat box or give me a little holler. Good to go? Beautiful. Rosanna, thank you. Somebody's paying attention. 3781 Travis Trace. It's a 6-unit building. It's in Decatur, where it's greater, and it's a 1-street neighborhood. This is the newest building on there. The other ones, you can't really see them past these trash cans, but they're townhouses that have been neglected and they're beat up. First time I drove down the street, I said, nice building, we can renovate it, but you can't pick your neighbors. And we kind of had an unruly crowd on the street. You know, the kind that is hanging out and is not making our showings any better when people come to look at it, if you know what I mean. A lot of old cars are beat up. We had one car that had busted out rims. It was like sitting on blocks on the street. Like, yeah, like a bad street. So when I was buying this is one of those things that was a risk. I'm like, I know the risk of bad paint, bad flooring, water damage, a water heater, HVAC, whatever. I know the cost to fix that. I don't know if I can fix the neighbors' houses. So these are the before shots. The building from the outside doesn't look that bad, as you can see. On the inside, pretty junky stuff everywhere. And we just cleaned it up, made it look better. All right, these are the afters. Floors, paint, kept the cabinets, some new appliances, put in our own staging in there, and took pro pics. Put in a couple new toilets. With Travis Trace specifically, this one was a fun one. And I'll tell you why it was a fun one, because of the whole street situation. When we went in there, I was like, man, I know that when we list these townhouses and I pull up showing time Monday morning and I'm looking at the feedback from all the buyer's agents, you know, that feedback that we hate getting, you get like 4 emails from the listing agent, like, hey, Willie, you showed my property over the weekend, you know, just calling to see what your buyer thought about it. All that feedback was, Tim, we love the townhouse. We hated the neighborhood. We hated the street. So we went in there and literally cut all, like, I freaking love everybody that lives there now. I think they love us too. We went in there, we cut everybody's grass, we replaced their mailboxes, we washed people's cars. I got one dude's car towed to a rim shop and bought him new rims and tires. He was like about to cry. Like it was awesome, you know? And so for me, doing a project like this, like, yes, we made some money on it. It was great. It was a successful project. We've got a couple more that are about to pending, that are about to close. But what's super fun for me doing these projects is like when the neighbors come up to you and they're like, man, thank you for cleaning up the street. Thank you for the people that weren't paying rent, that were doing sketchy stuff over here. Thank you for not having them be here and moving in nice new families. Like that is that's fun for me. I really enjoy that. Anyway, this project, 2,700 on dumpsters. We had some demo, a ton of landscaping. As you can see, that included cutting neighbors' grass and cleaning up the street. Some HVAC work, locks and hardware, appliances, plumbing and water heater, 4,000. Painted the walls. By the way, this is for 6 units. This is not for 1 unit. So when you see paint for $18,000 interior paint, that's take that and divide it by 6 is roughly $3,000 to paint the walls, ceilings, and trim for each unit. Floor and carpet, we kept a lot of the floors. That's why this price is so low. I put in here car and rim repair. That was what I mentioned when we helped out the neighbor, $2,500. So, by the way, I got some pushback on this from my team. They said, dude, why are we spending $2,500 to fix up some dude's car? Like, what is it? And I'm like, look, I'll tell you this. Like, when a buyer pulls down the street and they see a car that's got a busted out tire, and like, what impression does that give them? How many buyers are we going to lose because they see that? And they say, you know what, Tim, I don't like this neighborhood. This is like not good. So even though it's kind of like my whole staging analogy, like I don't know how much staging makes, but I promise you that we got that $2,500 back in one form or another, whether it's by having lower DOMs for this property, days on market, or a higher purchase price or lower seller paid closing costs. I promise you this came back around. Master bath, $3,400, lighting, $2,500, and materials were approximately $30,000 for a grand total of $110,000 on the construction. $110,000 spent on renovating the building, those 6 units, and the street. On the next slide, we made $261,000. Not a bad little deal. Purchase price, whoops. How do you go back on these? Purchase price, $912,000. Construction expenses, $110,000 across all 6 units. Buyers, agents, ballpark, we were selling these for like $220,000, $225,000, something like that. $40,000 of buyer agent commissions. And then sales price, $1.323 million or $220,000 per each unit, netted $261,000. Pretty good deal. Any questions about this one, guys? Simi said, hey, Tim, long time no see. Simi, I hope you're doing well. Simi is a hard money lender. If you guys are looking to do flips, that's the guy you want to call.
Thanks, man.
Yes, sir.
Bring me some projects. Let me quote you some stuff.
We'll talk. We'll talk
Okay.
offline.
Sounds good.
I'm going to send you guys, we've got about 8 minutes left. I got one more case study that we can cover. I will send you guys my some of my vendors. I'm actually about to copy and paste that and put it into the box right here. Not the best format that just came out, but at least you guys have the phone numbers and emails of these folks. I've been working with most of these people for several years, and all that I ask is just drop my name. I don't get anything out of this. I just like helping them out because they do a good job for me. I included closing attorney. If you guys couldn't guess, the best closing attorney in all the land, Mr. Doug Dean himself. Duct cleaning. Next time you're at like an old house, take a look in the return vent. You're going to see all kinds of weird stuff up there growing. So I highly recommend, if you don't do it at your clients' houses, just please do it at your own home. Just close your eyes when they're doing it, because you're going to be like, dude, I've been breathing this in like while I'm sleeping. This is gross. Smoke mitigation. I finally found a smoke mitigation guy that does a great job. This is not like some like, hey, maybe we might be able to get the 10 years of cigarette smoke out. This guy comes in with like commercial chemicals and bombs the whole house. And like you don't go in there for like a day and a half. And it works. Like it works surprisingly well. Would highly recommend calling Ken Goodnight is the guy that we use. Costs somewhere between like $1,100 and $1,500. Photographer Keith. He's over at Georgia Homeview in Woodstock. Great guy. Pat Shankle, she does our staging. Countertops, Brandt. Windows, like I mentioned in the last case study, that's Bruce and Elijah. Carpet, Jose. Got some electricians. Some of these, I forget who asked the question about like labor. These are my guys. They will probably quote you a little bit more than they would quote me, but I guarantee you they will quote you a lot less than if you were to go on Angie's List or Thumbtack or Google and like just look up some random, fancy company that is business bureau rated and certified, accredited nonsense that causes your costs to go way up. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's good marketing, but you don't want contractors that are too fancy. Any questions on contractors before we move on to the next case study? Beautiful. Let's hit this next one. We got about 5 minutes left and then we'll wrap it. This is a house that, where is this at? Chartwell Drive, Marietta. Marietta house. Don't you love that sideways siding? I grew up in a neighborhood in Alpharetta called Rivermont. It was a 1980s built neighborhood, and like more than half the houses had this siding. I don't know what they were thinking back then, Moving along. These are the before shots. This is what it looked like. Here's more before shots. Here's some of the work that we did to it. Painted it, kept the siding, pressure washed it, cleaned up the inside. You can see we staged it, painted everything. We've been going with these gray tones. We're about to start switching into the beiges. You can see we've already started transitioning on our floors. I think the grays are still good. They're still selling, but they're getting to that point. Like remember in 2013, 14, we had that like leopard, like cheetah print granite in everybody's kitchen, That's how I feel about the grays coming around soon. Moving along, did some work, new countertops. Again, painted the cabinets, did not replace the cabinets. Good way to save money. On this one, we kept the old windows, kept the old roof. This was one, Miss Song, you had the question about the HVAC and the water heater, like when do you keep it, when do you not? This is one when the buyers were buying this one, I was like, if it was me buying this house, I'd recommend replacing this roof. We just didn't have it in the budget. But I want you to know that if you're spending all the money you got saved up your whole life on the down payment for this house, you probably shouldn't buy it because you need to have a little something in your reserve in case your roof starts leaking and you need to replace it. These are the costs. Total construction costs came out to be $42,000 on this one. And here's the money that we made, 85 G's. Purchase price $300, construction $42, buyer agent $13,000, sales price $440. And yeah, we netted 85. Pretty good deal. We got 3 minutes left. Connect with me. Send me an email, Tim Hardeman RE. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on the gram. I've been on the TikTok, but kind of stopped posting on the TikTok. Had one video go viral, got like 3-something million views, but it wasn't like real estate related. Anyway, if you want to go on there, hit me up.
And I just followed you on the gram.
Ah, my man, Willie. And then YouTube, I'm building out. I bought the office across the hall from ours. So we're building out YouTube studio. I've posted some YouTube stuff in the past couple of years. but I put that on pause as we've been focused on flipping all these houses. I got to ask for you guys. Hopefully you got a little value out of this presentation. My ask is, if you have a beat up house that's not listing worthy and you don't want it, meaning you don't want to do the renovation, shoot it over to me. You can still get, if you're representing the seller or whatever, you'd get a buyer agent commission, obviously, and they'd get an offer and it'd be a win-win. My second ask is, if you know any agents, or, whether they're agents or not agents, if you know anybody looking for a job, we are currently hiring. We're currently hiring for sales agents. Our sales guys are, it's not like a typical, brokerage model where it's straight commission only. Everybody gets paid a salary, a base salary, and then they're also making commissions on the deals that they're closing. Looking for sales guys. We're going to be looking for a marketing person here soon. And who else are we looking for? Some phone folks, telemarketers, appointment setters. So if you're a good person and you want to come work with us, give me a holler. That's it. That concludes us with 1 minute remaining, right on time. Any other questions that I can help answer? Shalisa, you're welcome. Deborah, you're great.
Hey, great job, Tim. Appreciate all the information. I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping up because we do want to try to keep it on time. If you have any questions, I'm going to go ahead and put my email in the chat as well. You can always reach out to me. And oops, that's not right. Hold on, there's no underscore. But we're glad you were able to join us, and look forward to next month. And Tim, great to hear from you as always. Tim does a great job. We've been working with him for a while. He's what he says is what he says, and he's honest and he's straightforward, and he does a really good job and really takes care of everybody. I always like the phrase, talking about earlier, when sometimes it's better to spend a little bit more to do the right thing. What they say, pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. So there's a right way and a wrong way, and Tim does a really good job and does it the right way. But unless there are any last minute questions, I am going to go ahead and end the meeting and look forward to seeing everybody next month.
I'm going to leave you guys with one last thing. Matt, thank you. Tracy, you guys are awesome. Since I'm guessing most of us are self-employed and we probably won't have Social Security when it's time to, retire, I would recommend everybody start working on their self-directed Roth IRA. There's a book that talks specifically how you can incorporate your real estate stuff with the Roth, written by Dykes Bodiford. He's actually out of Atlanta. I sent it in the chat. Check them out. Like, this book changed my life and how I'm able to buy houses with my self-directed IRA. And man, I wish Miss Song was still on the call. I feel like she would get value out of this. And you can just make a ton of money doing it, and you're not paying taxes as long as you're doing it the right way. And it is like amazing. It will set you up for retirement, like in a pretty big way. Anyway, that's my last give. If you guys
Thanks,
need,
guys, have a good night. Have a good day. Enjoy the rest of your week.
see y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.